What is going on, and welcome back to the channel as I'm going straight back into the expanded format with this Sableye V deck that I've constructed. It's a very interesting deck as we have to go in with things like Tapu Koko, and we've got Roxy Weezing combo so that we can get that damage on for the Sableye V, as I'll discuss in the deck list and the matches. But if you're new here, be sure to subscribe down below, and as always comment what your thoughts are on this deck. Let's start off by having a look at the Sableye V. If you're not familiar with this card, it does have the awesome Crazy Claws attack for 2 dark energy. You only deal 10 damage, but for each damage counter on the defending Pokemon, you deal an additional 60 damage. This scales up extremely quickly because, for example, if the defending Pokemon has, say, 4 damage counters, that would be 40 damage already on there. Then this attack would deal 60 for each of those. 4 times 6 of course is 240, so you're dealing a total of 250 damage. With the damage that's already on there, that's going to be 290 damage, which is enough to knock out tag teams. So beyond that point, you're pretty much able to one hit, or I guess 2 hit VMAXs, because of course you have to have the damage on there already. But the point is, you're going to be scaling this damage up very quickly with the various modifiers that we have in this deck. And of course we have that first attack. Load Search can be useful for getting back a card from the discard pile, but typically it is too slow for the strategy that we're going for. The other thing to note is with Sableye, it only has 170 HP, definitely not a very high amount of HP, so certainly something to be aware of if you are going to be playing this deck. Moving on though, we do have a bunch of other Pokemon and trainer cards to look at here, the main one being Tapu Koko with Flying Flip. I like to go in with this to put damage across all of my opponent's board, as we're dealing 20 damage every time we attack to each of our opponent's Pokemon, and this is going to set up the damage that we need in order to deal big knockouts with the Crazy Claws attack, as we can use Flying Flip a couple of times in combination with Roxy and the Weezing here. So when we discard the Weezing with Roxy, we're able to put a damage counter onto each of our opponent's Pokemon, and of course we can discard 2 of these to get the effect activation twice. This is going to spread 20 damage across each of our opponent's board when we use it, in combination with the Flying Flip as another 20, so we can deal 40 damage in one turn to each of our opponent's Pokemon, which is where the Sableye can then come in and tidy up, or we can use Flying Flip again after that if we need to deal with things like VMAXs. Then of course we do have the Roxys in here, as I mentioned, which combo with the Weezing. You get to discard a Pokemon from your hand and then draw 3 cards, but you can do this up to 2 Pokemon, so you can draw 6 cards essentially, which is very good draw overall. And of course getting that extra damage in is what's going to get this deck going. We also have the standard consistency that you see in expanded, like the Professor's Research or Juniper, whatever one you like to use. And then we also have Culver's, and here of course very good, you're going to go behind on prizes quite often as your Tapu Koko gets knocked out. And to combo with that, we do have the Counter Energy here. This counts as essentially 2 Rainbow Energy, which you can apply onto the Sableye V, and that is going to allow it to attack for just 1 attachment. As your Tapu Koko gets knocked out, you attach the Counter Energy, then you go in with Sableye and use 1 energy attachment to take a big knockout and then go ahead in the prize race. Very effective, but we do also still have the Dark Energy of course for when we're not behind on prizes, so that we can still get attacks in even though we're ahead in the prize race. The rest of the deck, just consistency trainers like the Nest Balls, Ultra Balls. You do need to search out your Pokemon, so Ultra Ball is the best way to do that. And of course our ace spec of choice is Computer Search, to be able to search out any card that we need in any particular situation. And we have the, of course, Versus Seekers, Battle Compressors to get our supporters in the discard, so we have a good selection at any given time, along with our Dark Patches to easily accelerate that energy onto Sableye. And finally we have our Silent Lab, which is going to disrupt our opponent a little bit, but as I will discuss in the matches, possibly not the best choice here, as this is going to prevent us from using things like Dedenne and Crobat, as you can see, are missing from this deck. And perhaps if I go back and revisit this deck in future, I'd probably put in things like Dedenne and Crobat rather than the Silent Lab, just to give us a bit more consistency, because the consistency certainly is lacking at times with this deck, as you'll see in the matches here that we're about to get into. So be sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this video at any point, and we'll get into the matches, see if we can take some big knockouts, and see if we can make this deck work. Starting off this first game, my opponent has opted to go first here since they do need to evolve, which isn't too great for us because our opening hand isn't the best here, but we do have a Nest Ball for a Tapu Koko. Just want to search the deck to see that we do in fact have our Float Stone in there, which is pretty much ideal, as we really need to find that this turn so we can retreat into this Tapu Koko. But relying on this N here is certainly not going to do a huge amount for us, since we do have to find a couple of cards, mainly the energy as well as the Float Stone. Looks like we are only going to find the energy though. We at least get a Silent Lab that I will stick into play, as that can really help us out against our opponents, stopping them from playing things like Dedenne, Crobat, Tapu Lele, Jirachis, all that good stuff that are basic Pokemon, of course, with abilities, and they also have an effect when they come into play. So Silent Lab is certainly helping out against those, but this is a primarily evolution based deck. As we can see, they are playing the Solgaleo. That's going to be doing a lot of damage, and is able to knock out our Pokemon in one hit. 230 is more than enough to knock out a Sableye V in just one hit. And they're also playing the Metagross here, so they're going to be using that to accelerate energy back onto the Solgaleo once it's been gone ahead and attacked. They do have to discard energy. Now looking at the Sableye here, it does have a 2 retreat cost, so unfortunately we can't make use of the counter energy here to retreat, and we are going to be forced to be a Seeker for the N, giving my opponent a fresh hand, which is never a good thing in any situation, and certainly here when we're missing the Float Stone once again, that is really going to hurt us and put us in a tricky spot. My opponent does need quite a bit of energy to get going here, so I don't feel too bad about attaching onto the active, and we can use the attack on Sableye to get an item card back. I'm not really sure which one I want to get back though. I suppose we could Ultra Ball, search something out, but that's not really going to do all that much. So I'm going to actually just get back the Versus Seeker. Could come in useful, and just to have it available in the deck if my opponent uses something like an N or a Marnie, then having that extra Versus Seeker around is always going to be useful to us. Most likely going for the Roxy on this following turn though. That's going to allow us to draw a lot of cards, since we will be able to get that other Weezing into our hand with the Ultra Ball that we've got here. We'll have to see what my opponent goes for though. If we do get the Roxy plus Weezing play, then we should be able to get a 20 damage spread across all of my opponent's board, and then we will also be able to draw 6 cards, which should help us get towards that Float Stone. If not, then we can hopefully find a Dark Energy, which would also be ideal here. My opponent does fill up their board. He did replace the Silent Lab, that's going to allow them to put down that Crobat as we've seen there, drawing up a little bit, and then going for the Professor Juniper to discard their hand and draw 7. So they're certainly looking to set up the rest of their board. That Metagross does have a 3 attack cost, so they don't quite have enough energy in play at the moment to be able to attack into us, and even if they did attack us, they're a little bit of damage short. They wouldn't be able to get a knockout there, but they go for the GX attack. That is going to put a lot of cards into their hand, as they do get to search their deck for 5 cards, any cards out of their deck, which really puts me in a tough spot, as I want to end those cards back into the deck, or alternatively we do go for the Roxy play here. Now I think we will be going for the N though. I don't want my opponent to have all of those cards that they just searched out. I want them to waste the GX attack that they just used there, so let's go ahead and N. I think we will Ultra Ball though. Don't really want Roxy in the deck at the moment. We do have multiple copies, and we can always get it back with the Versus Seeker. So I'm actually going to go for the Ultra Ball, getting a Tapu Koko, and then we can go with our N, shuffle our hand into our deck along with my opponent doing the same. We do find some energy, but that's not going to be super useful right now, since we don't have a whole lot to work with. I think I will actually just be retreating. Like I said, we do have the dark patches in deck, so we can always get those dark energy back, and of course having the dark energy in hand is going to help us out as well. Unfortunately, we're not doing a huge amount of damage with the flying flip, as my opponent gives us the smiley face there. So we have the Cosmog here, which does have the Cosmic Guard protecting it on the bench, and then the Stadium here, which reduces damage done to their metal Pokemon by 10, which means that's across their whole board, and Flying Flip does minus 10 to all of their Pokemon, so certainly not the most amount of damage that we could have been doing there, but at least we do have another Tapu Koko we can make use of, and certainly putting a double colorless on there. We do pick up the counter energy as well, which is pretty good, but I think I will be shuffling these cards back into the deck with Polaris, and just looking to find a Roxy setup plus the Weezing for the following turn. We just get a Sableye though, no Roxy, nothing much else to work with here, finally getting Floatstone a couple of turns too late there. We can Battle Compressor though and discard some of these cards like the Professor's Research or Juniper in this case. And there's not much else that we want to discard here, possibly another Juniper, but I think we want our supporters around still. Potentially a Nest Ball as well, so we don't have a huge amount of basic Pokemon. So we'll discard those two just to thin the deck a little. And we can always put in another Sableye in case my opponent uses an N or something of that nature. And we'll go for the Flying Flip once again, putting 10 onto the active and 10 onto the other metal Pokemon that my opponent has in play, which they're most likely going to be attacking with. Then when they take the knockout here, we can go in with our Sableye, use our counter energy, and we're going to be good to go to get an attack in. Don't think we're going to be doing enough damage just yet, as they only have 20 on them, so that's only going to be dealing 130 with Sableye. And they do have the Solgaleo here, which is going to allow them to switch out after using that Gizmo, and they're going to be able to hit into our Sableye for 150 damage and get the knockout here. It's a little unfortunate, they do go up 2 more prize cards here. We do have the option of using Flying Flip once again, but like I said, that's not going to be doing a lot for us since we're only hitting for 10 across my opponent's board. But I think that is the only real option that we have to go with here. We do have a discarding option to draw some more cards that we can work with. We get the Roxy, we get some decent stuff here. We do get the Silent Lab as well, so we can hit for a little bit more damage. That is going to be crucial here. And also having the Ultra Ball to work with is quite nice, as we can get down another Sableye here, which is definitely what I'm going to go for. Don't really need the double colorless, as we've already made use of our Flying Flips as much as possible. Certainly getting down a Sableye, making use of this Dark Patch while we can, is going to be needed here. And nothing else that we can play out. We've played our supporter, so we'll just go with the Flying Flip, 20 across all of my opponent's board. And now we're feeling a little bit more comfortable in being able to take knockouts here, although the fact that my opponent only has 3 prize cards remaining means that they only have to knock out this Tapu Koko along with a Sableye V as well. So they're in a pretty good position to be able to win this game, and they also have a whole bunch of more evolutions coming down, so that's going to be able to help them get their setup going and ensure that they have energies in play throughout the rest of this game. Also going for a Field Blower, discarding our Stadium as well as the Floatstone. Not going to be a huge deal here, mainly getting that Silent Lab down was to replace the Stadium on that previous turn, but we see a retreat from my opponent, looking to get that energy back onto the Solgaleo here, since they have the Metagross, which allows them to do that. And then we can see what they're going to do. They're just going to be switching out from the looks of things. They don't want to take a knockout here just yet, which is perfectly fine by me. We have the Evolution Incense that's going to grab us a Weezing. Also check the discard pile. We do have a Weezing in there, so we can actually make use of this Rescue Stretcher getting the second Weezing out of the discard, and we've got the Versus Seeker as well, so we can grab ourselves that Roxy. Sure, we probably could have gone with a Lysander play or something along that kind of lines to target down a Solgaleo or something, but this is way more fun, and we do have to try and show off the Roxy combo, of course. That is the whole point of the deck here, getting this extra damage in with Roxy and Weezing. And we even pick up another Tapu Koko. Not going to be relevant, but we might as well play it down anyway, along with the Silent Lab. Now just going for a Flying Flip, we can take a knockout on this Cosmog, which is finally our first prize card of the game. And we do pick up a Dark Energy. My opponent concedes. Perhaps they just didn't see a way of winning. I'm not really sure why though, because they certainly had plenty of options, but hey, at least we're able to show off just how the deck works, because from there we would have went in with our Sableye V and done a lot of damage. Let's get into the next game and see what we can do there. Looks like we've got another bad hand situation in this game. At least we do have the computer search though to bail us out, although I don't think we're going to be playing a huge amount of stuff in this opening turn, just so that we can see what it is that my opponent is playing. We can certainly discard a couple of supporters here though, that we're not going to need straight away. Probably just the Roxy and N, as well as a Dark Energy. Seems pretty reasonable overall. We do have the computer search as well as the Ultra Ball here, so maybe we could hold off on the Dark Energy for now and just ditch another supporter card that we can have access to with our Versus Seeker, of course. Now we'll definitely play an Ultra Ball, discarding the Lysander and Dark Energy. Grab our Tapu Koko out of the deck, seems like a good option. Sure, we do have the Dark Patch. Maybe we could go with that, but I think Tapu Koko is just going to be more beneficial here overall. And we can always discard our Weezing and whatever we top deck in order to get a supporter card, but we'll have to see what it is that my opponent is playing in general. All we know at the moment is that they're playing a Victini V, so perhaps they're playing the VMAX, perhaps there's other things in the deck, well, not quite sure yet. But they have a pretty bad hand. They don't really do anything here. We top deck the Roxy, which isn't a great card to top deck. We do already have the one Weezing in our hand, but this means that we can't really use the computer search, unfortunately. But still, we'll go with this. We'll discard the one Weezing with Roxy. Certainly gives us a little bit of damage to work with. And we also top deck the Versus Seeker, but no energy here, so I think it's going to be a big ol' pass from us. I don't really mind my opponent hitting us, although they could get a knockout here if they attach another energy. That's going to be 120. And unfortunately, Sableye only has 170 HP. So that's not ideal. I do want to use the computer search to grab out a Floatstone, so that we can retreat this Sableye and try and protect it if we can here. So there's our Floatstone, is indeed in the deck, so we can attach that to Sableye, retreat into Tapu Koko, and we even get to make use of the Dark Patch here. So it gets an energy on, and then we can pass over to my opponent, which puts us in a reasonable spot for this following turn. But we really need to find a bit more damage, hopefully through Weezings, but if it comes down to using a Flying Flip, then that's just what we're going to have to go for here. Unfortunate that my opponent isn't able to bench anything else, so we won't be able to get a really effective Flying Flip off. Just doing 20 to the active is pretty poor overall. You really want to be spreading as much as possible, and even to rub it in, my opponent is using Pokemon Center Lady, which I really don't understand why people play that card, but apparently they're going to be playing it, and they also get the energy to knock out our Tapu Koko. So now we're going to be forced back into our Sableye. Now we do pick up the counter energy, which I suppose I could attach here, but I'm not really sure that's going to be helping us out all that much. Sure, we could go for a N, I suppose. It's the only thing that we really have to work with, so sure, we'll go ahead and attach it. We might not hit energy, so definitely just need to go with that to work with it. And we'll Versus Seeker for N. Definitely wishing I'd got a Professor Juniper in the discard pile earlier, but it's fine, we'll work with this. We have another Sableye here, and we also have a Ultra Ball. I think I'll just hold the Ultra Ball for now though, and we can certainly go for a 10 damage poke, I guess. I don't really want anything out of the discard pile other than maybe computer search, but that just gives my opponent another turn of getting damage in, so we really want to pressure our opponent here. Even doing this 10 damage means that on the following turn we're going to be hitting for 70, and we can start ramping it up from then. Even if we have the wheezing as well, then that will help us to get some damage in, but my opponent has a blacksmith, so that's going to get them their energy back. That's all they need here in order to get the knockout. As I said, we don't have a huge amount of HP on Sableye, which is the real main thing holding it back, as you can typically trade favourably against VMAXs since you're only giving up 2 prize cards, but in this particular situation my opponent is attacking far too efficiently for us to be able to do anything about it. We can Ultra Ball here and get ourselves a Wheezing out of the deck, and then we can Roxy. Hopefully we can top deck a counter energy off of this. That would actually do is very well, and probably get the knockout as well, to be fair. So let's see if we can top deck the counter energy off of 6 cards. Yes, there it is. We get the 20 damage in from our Wheezing. Just in case it's not the knockout, then I'll put that down, but pretty sure we're doing what, 180, 190 damage. So yeah, we have the knockout here. That's all you need. Your opponent is not playing anything down to avoid the flying flip, then you just need to get in there, try and get the damage in with the Wheezing, and we were able to do that in order to close out this game. And yeah, it feels good when that happens, man. Get the strategy off, get it going, and you can close it out very easily. Going into this game, we are going second, which is definitely the preferred thing when we start with Tapu Koko, but unfortunately we don't have any double colourless energy. We're stuck with this counter energy, which is not going to be covering the 2 energy attack costs of Tapu Koko. Very unfortunate, but we are up against an ADP-ization deck here, so it will take them a couple of turns to get set up, especially since they are going first. I'm guessing though that they're most likely playing the double dragon energy so that they can get that auto creation GX attack off. We also have a Lysander here that we can use on the ADP. It's going to make it easier for them to get that GX attack off, but we're really going to have to go for it here since my opponent does have the double energy on that Zacian. We want to try and stall them out and stop them from taking a knockout on our Tapu Koko here. And we see a Max Elixir from them getting another Metal Energy onto that Zacian, so it is definitely powered up and ready to take knockouts. And there's the switch from my opponent, getting another Max Elixir. Is it going to hit though this time? And it does. So definitely playing a very turbo build of the deck, focusing mainly on the basic energies, which definitely makes sense to me. They got a Cynthia there, going for a Nest Ball to get into another basic Pokemon, and of course grabbing themselves a second Zacian here, so that they have a backup attacker. Also attaching onto the Arceus Delta Palkia GX Tag Team, so that they can attack with that on this following turn, since the Zacian won't be able to attack once they take a knockout here. But our hand is pretty much atrocious, as we have absolutely nothing that we can play out here. My opponent putting down the Stadium, Chaotic Swell, and they do take that knockout, making it the first prize card of the game, just on their second turn of the game already. We do top deck the Computer Search, and of course we can attack with the counter energy here on Sableye, although doing 10 damage isn't going to be particularly relevant. We do have a Rescue Stretcher we can use though to get back a Tapu Koko, and then we can go for our Computer Search and search out a supporter card, which is going to be definitely useful for us here. Discard the Dark Patch and a Sableye, and most likely just going to get ourselves the Professor Research here. Makes the most sense to me. Let's go ahead and discard our hand. We do get the Roxy combo, but unfortunately we have used our supporter, so of course we're not going to be able to make use of that just yet. We can of course attack with the Sableye though. Like I said, 10 damage, not going to be super relevant, but at the very least we can get a knockout on this following turn if my opponent doesn't retreat or anything of that sort. We put down a second ADP as well as attaching that third energy, so that's going to allow them to easily retreat. and just attack with the ADP. Going for the altered creation rather than taking the knockout there, so it does give us a little bit of time, but of course they will be able to take extra prizes, which is going to benefit them greatly. And we can evolution incense. Oh, looks like we don't have any more wheezing, which is rather unfortunate. Just going to have to rock seal away these two that we do have and spread some damage across my opponent's board while drawing a lot of cards here. Definitely want to maximize the damage that we're doing. We've got a Tapu Koko that we can use and slap an energy on there as well. Don't see why not. We've got an Ultra Ball we can also play out. I can't remember if we have our third Sableye in here. It doesn't look like we do. We just have Tapu Kokos left, so we're going to have to try and find that rescue stretcher we just saw there. I'll hold the Tapu Koko for now, and we'll just go for an attack with our Sableye V. Not going to be anywhere close to a knockout, but there's nothing else that we can really do at this point anyway. Well, my opponent is going to be taking 3 prize cards on our Sableye on this following turn. If we're able to get a rescue stretcher as well as a counter energy, then we could potentially pick up a knockout, but it's going to be too late at that point as my opponent only has a couple of prize cards left to take, and of course they're also accelerating energy onto their bench, which is going to mean they have a plethora of attackers that they can use here. Let's see what we top deck though. We do have a Professor Research we can make use of. Good old Juniper there being reliable. And we don't really have anything else either that we can play out in our hand, so it's going to be a case of thinning out the deck as much as possible. Definitely going to take this Tapu Koko so that it's thinned out. Don't really need to put down all 4 as we are just looking for a couple of cards here, but doesn't look like that's going to be the case. We aren't able to find them, and we're not even able to take a knockout as it does have 150, well 130 HP remaining. We can only hit for 100 with our Tapu Koko, so I guess we'll just flying flip and give my opponent the game because there's nothing else that we have. And as you can see, this deck tends to dead draw quite a bit. I found it's not super consistent despite the amount of supporter cards we have. We do have quite a good draw engine overall for the expanded format, but for whatever reason, perhaps I just need more draw cards like Tapu Koko and not Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, which gets us a supporter card, as well as things like Dedenne and Crobat. Rather than trying to use the Silent Lab, I should probably draw more aggressively. Is my main takeaway with this deck, because it is certainly a fun one, but despite the 2 matches that we had previously, as you can see, we weren't able to get set up effectively against the big decks like ADP, so not going to be a super great deck overall, but it is a very fun one if you want to do a lot of damage. So hopefully you enjoyed the video anyway, and be sure to give it a like if you did. I'll see you in the next one.